The story of Rome, etched in stone and scattered across the ruins of 3 continents, is a narrative of unparalleled ambition. It is, at its heart, a story of conquest, a relentless, centuries-long epic of expansion that has few parallels in human history. But this colossal empire did not spring into existence fully formed. It is the story of a small, unassuming city-state, born on the banks of the Tiber River, surrounded by rivals who were older, wealthier, and more powerful. From these humble beginnings, this single city grew to dominate the Italian peninsula, and then, with breathtaking speed, it grew to rule an entire sea. The Mediterranean, which the Romans would come to call Mare Nostrum, our sea, became the central artery of their civilization. This incredible, world-altering expansion was not an accident of history, nor was it simply the result of good fortune. It was the direct and calculated result of a remarkable military machine, an institution of unparalleled efficiency and resilience, the Roman legions. For over half a millennium, the legions were the most effective, disciplined, and adaptable fighting force on Earth. They were more than just an army. They were the engine that powered Rome's growth, the cutting edge of its ambition, and the guarantor of its peace. With this engine of war, Rome transformed itself from a minor Italian town, one of many vying for local dominance, into a vast, continent-spanning empire, an empire of 100 million souls speaking dozens of languages, all living under the watchful eye of the eagle. Its frontiers, patrolled by the legions, stretched from the cold, misty hills of Britain, marking the very edge of the known world, to the scorching hot sands of Mesopotamia and the deserts of North Africa. The legions were the thin red line holding this immense and diverse world together. In every corner of this empire, the individual legionary was the ultimate symbol of Roman power. His distinctive silhouette was instantly recognizable. He was a figure of both profound fear and grudging respect, from the forests of Germania to the shores of the Black Sea. He was the face of order and the instrument of subjugation. Therefore, to truly understand the rise and fall of Rome, understanding the legions is not just helpful, it is absolutely essential. The army was never merely a tool of foreign policy to be deployed and forgotten. No, it was deeply and inextricably woven into the very fabric of Roman society. It shaped families, created new classes of citizens, and built cities from scratch on the frontiers. It was central to Roman politics, capable of making and unmaking emperors. A general's ambition, backed by the swords of his legions, could rewrite the destiny of the Republic, and it was fundamental to its economy, consuming a vast portion of the state's budget, while also securing the trade routes and mines that generated its immense wealth. In this series, we will explore the complete, unvarnished story of the Roman legions. We will trace their epic journey from their humble beginnings as a citizen militia to their eventual decline and transformation. We will deconstruct this fighting force to understand how it truly worked, its organization, training, and battlefield method. We will also map the career ladder inside a legion, from the ordinary miles to the skilled immunes, engineers, medics, artisans, then the principals, Tesserarius, Guard NCO, Signifer and Cornicen, Standard and Signal, and the Optio, Deputy. Above them stood the centurions in graded ranks up to the elite Primus Pilus, with the Praefectus Castrorum overseeing the camp. Promotion came through proven discipline, long service, decorations for bravery, literacy and skill, and the recommendation of centurions and the legate. Battlefield merit could elevate a soldier directly to a centurion, and distinguished primipili could enter the equestrian order. We will look in detail at the iconic weapons and armor they carried into battle. The short, double-edged stabbing sword, the gladius, designed for close-quarters combat. The heavy, armor-piercing throwing spear, the pilum, engineered to disable an enemy's shield and disrupt his formation. Beyond the battlefield, we will uncover the logistical genius that allowed Rome to feed, pay and supply hundreds of thousands of soldiers operating in hostile territory, often thousands of miles from home. This was perhaps their greatest weapon of all. Our journey will follow a clear chronological path. We will begin with the legion's origins in the early Republic, witness its perfection in the age of Caesar and Augustus, and follow its adaptation and eventual transformation during the crises of the later empire. We will see how generations of conflict, from the brutal wars against Hannibal to the campaigns in Gaul and the vision of leaders like Marius, Caesar and Augustus, constantly forged and reforged the legions into a force that conquered the known world. This chronological approach will reveal not just what the legions were at any single moment, but how they evolved, why they dominated for so long, and what their ultimate legacy is for the world we inhabit today. This is the story of the engine of empire. To understand the Roman army, we must first travel back to a time before the legions, before the eagles, and before the empire. In the earliest days of Rome, there was no standing army. The city on the 7 hills was not a sprawling metropolis, but a modest, often vulnerable, city-state surrounded by rivals. Survival, not conquest, was the primary concern. In this era, the Roman military was a part-time militia, a citizen levy known as the Soci. This wasn't a professional fighting force, but an assembly of the people in arms. When the threat of war loomed on the horizon, a summons would go out. Citizens would put down their farming tools, close their workshops, and leave their merchant stalls. They would pick up the spears and shields stored in their homes, ready to answer the call. These men were not professional soldiers. They were farmers, merchants, and craftsmen. Their military service was seasonal, carefully timed between the crucial periods of planting and harvesting. War was a grim interruption to civilian life, not a career. They were fighting to protect what was theirs, their homes, their families, and the precious land that sustained them. This intimate connection between the soldier and the state defined the early Roman Republic. To serve in the army was not merely a choice. It was a fundamental civic duty, inextricably linked to the rights and responsibilities of being a Roman citizen. It was an honor, a burden, and a defining feature of their identity. Crucially, the state did not equip its soldiers. Each man was expected to provide his own equipment. This single fact had profound consequences for the structure of the army. A man's wealth, as determined by the civic census, dictated not only if he served, but how he served. His position on the battlefield was a direct reflection of his status in society. The richest citizens, could afford horses and the finest armor, serving as the cavalry. Their role was vital for scouting, protecting the army's flanks, and pursuing a broken enemy. The poorest citizens, with little more than a tunic and a few javelins, served as the lightly armed skirmishers who harassed the enemy from a distance before the main battle was joined. But the heart of the early army was its heavy infantry, drawn from the citizens who could afford a shield, a helmet, and a spear. Initially, they fought in a formation borrowed from their Greek neighbors, the phalanx. This was a dense wall of overlapping shields and bristling spear points. On open, flat terrain, the phalanx was a formidable juggernaut, almost unstoppable in a frontal charge. But it was rigid and unwieldy. In the rugged, hilly country of central Italy, it proved clumsy and inflexible, easily disordered and vulnerable to attack on its flanks and rear. The early Romans fought countless small-scale wars against their immediate neighbors, the Latins, the Sabines, the Etruscans, and the fierce Samnite tribes of the Apennine Mountains. These conflicts were brutal but limited in scope. More importantly, they were a harsh school of warfare. Defeat and near disaster forced the Romans to learn, to innovate, and to adapt. They abandoned the rigid phalanx in favor of a more flexible system, the manipular legion. The army was now organized into small, independent tactical units called maniples, arranged in a checkerboard pattern. This allowed the legion to maneuver with far greater agility on broken ground, flowing around obstacles and responding to threats with a fluidity the phalanx could never match. The lines of battle were now also organized by experience. In the front were the youngest and most eager men. Behind them stood the soldiers in the prime of their life with more combat experience. And in the final line were the oldest and most seasoned veterans, a steady reserve to be committed only in the most dire of circumstances. To fall upon the triarii became a Roman expression for a desperate last-ditch effort. This pragmatic evolution from a simple militia into the sophisticated manipular legion was a critical step, but an even greater transformation was on the horizon. The shift from a citizen militia to a professional, full-time army would redefine Rome itself. This change did not happen overnight. It was a long and gradual process, driven relentlessly by the success of Roman arms and the relentless expansion of its territory. As Rome's influence spread from Italy to Sicily, Spain, North Africa, and Greece, its wars changed. They became longer, more distant, and more frequent. A farmer could no longer serve a summer campaign and return for the harvest. Campaigns could now last for years, taking men thousands of miles from their homes. The citizen-soldier system, the bedrock of the Republic, began to crack under the strain. Farms fell into neglect, families into debt, and the pool of eligible land-owning citizens began to shrink. The state needed soldiers who could serve for long campaigns, garrison distant provinces, and dedicate their entire lives to the craft of war. The solution was radical, a professional force composed of men who were soldiers and nothing else. While the process was gradual, it is most famously associated with the Marian reforms, named for the ambitious general and statesman Gaius Marius, around 107 BC. Facing a manpower crisis during a difficult war in North Africa, Marius took a revolutionary step. He opened recruitment to the head count, the masses of landless poor who had previously been barred from military service. For these men, the army was not a civic duty, but an opportunity. It offered steady pay, food, and the promise of a bonus or a plot of land upon retirement. In return, they offered something new, their unwavering loyalty, not to the abstract idea of the state, but to the general who recruited them, paid them, and led them to victory. This fundamentally altered the army's relationship with Roman politics. Generals now commanded private armies, loyal to them personally. The legions became kingmakers. This seismic shift set the stage for a century of brutal civil wars, as ambitious commanders like Sulla, Pompey, and Julius Caesar turned their legions against each other and against Rome itself, a conflict that would ultimately destroy the Republic and give rise to the empire. The citizen soldier was gone, replaced by the professional killer, and the world would never be the same. Augustus settles the army after civil war. Around 28 legions become a standing force with standardized pay, terms, and permanent bases along the frontiers. An oath binds soldiers to the emperor. Auxiliaries, cavalry, archers, and specialists expand capability, while veteran colonies anchor Roman power in conquered lands. The Praetorian Guard emerges to guard the imperial center. Standard forms the backbone of service, fixed stipend, discharge bonuses, and uniform kit expectations. Frontier fortresses turn permanent. Roads, bridges, and depots feed the legions year-round. Augustus converts seasonal campaigning into continuous readiness. The legions become a profession, not a duty. Under Trajan, engineering and logistics scale to conquest. The Dacian Wars demand siege lines, artillery trains, and the colossal bridge across the Danube. Recruitment broadens across provinces, integrating expertise. Hadrian consolidates. Borders pull back to defensible lines, and the frontier system hardens into walls, towers, and mile castles. Inspections and relentless drill maintain readiness. Kit and issue refine toward uniformity, efficiency over spectacle, so garrisons can hold ground with fewer surprises. Marcus Aurelius faces the Marco-Mannic Wars. Prolonged frontier fighting strains manpower, recruitment widens across provinces, and emergency levies fill ranks. Training time compresses, unit quality stretches, but the legionary structure, logistics, and discipline absorb the shock and keep the line. Septimius Severus buys stability and loyalty. Pay rises sharply. Donatives sweeten victories. Marriage permissions swell camp families and permanent communities around forts. The Praetorians expand, the treasury groans, short-term cohesion at long-term fiscal cost. Gallienus reforms command. Senators lose military posts, professional equestrian officers rise. A strengthened mobile cavalry arm becomes the empire's rapid response tool, fast columns that ride to crises and restore initiative against raiders and usurpers. Diocletian overhauls the state and the army. More legions, smaller on paper, distribute along a defense in depth, outposts to watch and delay, reserves to strike. Taxation and supply bureaus expand to feed permanent forces. Paperwork becomes a weapon of endurance. Constantine formalizes the split. Limitani garrison the lines. Comitatenses move as field armies. Command restructures for speed, and standardized shields and insignia mark identity across distance. Strategic mobility turns from improvisation into doctrine. Field armies concentrate where threats bite, then disperse before overextension. Fort lines buy time. Mobile corps deliver decision. The imperial system marries fixed defense to operational shock. Across these reigns, organization tightens, pay regularizes, and recruitment adapts to need. Equipment standardizes for maintenance and scale. Engineering remains the quiet edge, roads, bridges, walls, and camps enabling every movement. Command shifts toward professionals, cavalry grows, paperwork funds the sword, the legions change shape but keep their core, discipline, drill, and the habit of building before fighting. From Augustus to Constantine, imperial reform forges a durable system, professional service, standardized kit, relentless training, engineering excellence, and flexible deployment. Together, they remain the engine of empire. Did you enjoy this? If so, please like, comment, and subscribe for more history.